Who was Enoch? Among the many ancient texts that shaped religious imagination, few are as mysterious and as controversial as the Book of Enoch. It is quoted in early Christian writings. It influenced apocalyptic literature. It shaped ideas about angels, demons, and the structure of heaven. And yet, in most traditions, it is not part of the official canon. Why? To understand that, we must begin not with the Watchers, but with Enoch himself. Enoch appears briefly in the Hebrew Bible in the book of Genesis. His description is remarkably short. Unlike other figures whose lives are detailed through stories of struggle and triumph, Enoch is summarized in only a few lines. But those lines are unusual. It says, Enoch walked with God. Then he was no more because God took him. No death is described, no burials mentioned. He does not die in the ordinary sense. He's taken. That single phrase sparked centuries of speculation. Who was this man who did not die? Why was he taken? And what did he witness? The Book of Enoch expands that brief biblical mention into a vast apocalyptic narrative. In it, Enoch becomes more than a righteous man. He becomes a scribe of heaven, a witness to cosmic events, a mediator between divine beings and humanity. But here's where we must pause. The Book of Enoch was not written by the historical Enoch. Scholars date its composition to around the 3rd to 1st centuries BCE. It is a composite text, meaning it was written in sections over time. It survives fully only in the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition. Fragments were discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls, confirming its ancient roots. So while it is not part of the Jewish or most Christian biblical canons, it is far from a modern invention. It belongs to a genre known as apocalyptic literature. This genre does not aim to record ordinary history. It reveals hidden structures, heavenly hierarchies, cosmic judgments, symbolic visions. Its purpose is theological, not journalistic. Understanding this prevents us from reading it too literally, but it also prevents us from dismissing it too quickly. Because apocalyptic literature often reflects real anxieties, political instability, moral corruption, cultural upheaval. The Book of Enoch emerged during a time of intense social tension in the ancient world. Empires were rising and falling. Religious identity was under pressure. Questions about justice and divine order were urgent. And into that tension enters the story of the Watchers. In Enoch's account, the Watchers are not abstract metaphors. They are named, described, hierarchically structured. They descend to earth. They teach forbidden knowledge. They alter the course of humanity. And they are judged. But before we explore their descent, we must understand why this narrative mattered so deeply to its audience. The Book of Enoch is not simply a myth about angels. It is a response to the problem of evil, a response to the question of corruption, a response to the fear that knowledge once unleashed cannot be contained. In the text, Enoch does not rebel. He does not descend. He ascends. He is taken upward to witness divine judgment. He becomes the observer of those who cross the boundary. This reversal is significant. While the Watchers fall, Enoch rises. While they interfere, he records. While they disrupt order, he witnesses restoration. The contrast between ascent and descent becomes central. Heaven and earth are not meant to merge without consequence. Boundaries exist for a reason, and crossing them reshapes reality. In the next part, we'll move from Enoch the man to the Watchers themselves. Who were they? Why did they descend? And what exactly did they teach that was considered forbidden? The descent of the Watchers. According to the Book of Enoch, the Watchers were not ordinary angels. They were described as a specific order, a group assigned to observe humanity from above. Their task was clear. They were to watch, not to interfere, not to participate, not to descend, and yet they did. The text names their leader as Samjaza, who, along with 200 others, made a decision that would alter the human story. They descended upon Mount Hermon. This detail is important. The descent is not vague. It is localized, geographical, concrete. The Watchers do not drift symbolically into human consciousness. They choose a place, they choose a moment, and they cross the boundary between heaven and earth. Why? The narrative tells us they saw the daughters of men and desired them. This element has often been interpreted literally, metaphorically, or mythologically. But beyond the imagery, the theme is clear. They abandon their assigned role. They exchange observation for involvement. They bind themselves by oath. They commit collectively to the act of descent. And once that line is crossed, something irreversible begins. The Watchers do not simply interact with humanity. They teach. And what they teach is described in striking detail. Azazel teaches the art of weaponry, the crafting of swords and shields, the use of metals. Others teach astronomy, the reading of the stars, the movement of celestial bodies. Some teach enchantments, the cutting of roots, the secrets of the earth. These are not trivial skills, they are civilizational accelerators. Metallurgy changes warfare. Astronomy changes agriculture and navigation. Knowledge of materials reshapes tools and technology. The text calls this forbidden knowledge, but why would knowledge itself be forbidden? The Book of Enoch suggests that the problem is not knowledge in isolation, it is premature knowledge, knowledge given outside divine order, knowledge that humanity was not prepared to wield responsibly. As a result, violence increases, corruption spreads, the earth becomes filled with bloodshed. The descent of the Watchers is directly linked to moral decay. Now pause. Whether we read this literally or symbolically, the structure matters. Higher beings descend, they introduce transformative knowledge. Society destabilizes, judgment follows. This pattern mirrors other mythological traditions. Prometheus brings fire and suffers. Adam and Eve gain knowledge and are expelled. Across cultures, the acquisition of knowledge is framed as a turning point, not always a blessing. In Enoch, the consequences intensify. The union between the Watchers and human women produces offspring. The Nephilim, described as giants, mighty men, beings of great strength and appetite. They consume the resources of humanity. And when those resources are exhausted, they turn against humans themselves. Whether interpreted literally as hybrid beings or symbolically as the consequences of corruption, the Nephilim represent imbalance. They are the result of boundary violation. They are the physical manifestation of disorder. The earth cries out, and divine judgment is declared. The archangels petition God. Azazel is bound. The Watchers are imprisoned beneath the earth. They are forced to witness the destruction of their offspring. The flood is decreed. Humanity will be reset. Order will be restored. This is not merely an angel story. It is a cosmic courtroom, a narrative of transgression and accountability. The Watchers are not evil from the beginning. They become transgressors through choice. They are not ignorant. They are aware of the boundary. They choose to cross it, and crossing it changes everything. In the next part, we will examine the Nephilim more closely. Were they literal giants, mythic exaggerations, or symbolic representations of what happens when power outpaces restraint? Because in the Book of Enoch, the fall of the Watchers is only the beginning. The deeper question is what their descent says about humanity itself. The Nephilim and the consequence of power. When the Watchers descended, the text tells us their actions did not end with knowledge. Their union with human women produced offspring known as the Nephilim. The word itself is mysterious. Often translated as giants, it carries connotations of fallen ones, beings who exist outside ordinary categories. In the Book of Enoch, the Nephilim are described as immense in stature and insatiable in appetite. They consume the resources of humanity. They devour livestock. They strip the land. and when nothing remains, they turn against humans themselves. At first glance, this reads like mythic exaggeration. Ancient literature frequently uses giants to symbolize chaos or overwhelming force. But symbolism does not mean irrelevance. In fact, symbolism often carries deeper meaning than literal description. What do the Nephilim represent? If the Watchers symbolize the crossing of boundaries and the premature release of knowledge, then the Nephilim may represent the consequences of that act. Power without restraint, capacity without wisdom, acceleration without structure. The Watchers introduce metallurgy and warfare intensifies. They introduce advanced knowledge and hierarchy shifts. They introduce secrets and corruption spreads. The Nephilim are not merely physical beings in the narrative. They embody imbalance. They are the visible outcome of invisible disruption. Across mythological traditions, when divine order is disturbed, giants appear. In Greek mythology, the Gigantes rise against the Olympian gods. In Norse mythology, the Jotnar represent chaotic forces opposing divine structure. In the Hebrew tradition, the Nephilim occupy a similar symbolic space. They are larger than humanity, stronger than humanity, but lacking moral alignment. They magnify human weakness. The Book of Enoch intensifies this theme. It does not blame humanity alone for corruption. It traces disorder back to a higher realm. The Watchers are held responsible for unleashing forces humanity could not contain. This is significant. The narrative shifts the origin of evil away from human choice alone and toward cosmic interference. But that raises a difficult question. Why would a tradition preserve a story in which corruption originates from heaven rather than earth? Perhaps because it reflects a historical experience. There are moments in human development when change feels imposed rather than chosen. When technology advances faster than ethics, when social systems destabilize rapidly. To those living through such upheaval, the source of transformation can feel external, overwhelming, uncontrollable. The Nephilim then may symbolize what happens when human society receives tools it is not ready to wield. Strength without structure becomes tyranny. Knowledge without guidance becomes exploitation. Power without restraint becomes violence, and violence spreads. In the text, the earth itself cries out. This poetic image suggests that imbalance affects not just individuals, but creation as a whole. The response is judgment. The Watchers are bound. The Nephilim are destroyed, and the flood resets humanity. Here, the flood is not random catastrophe, it is restoration. A cleansing of corruption introduced through boundary violation. Again, the pattern emerges. Descent, knowledge, imbalance, judgment, reset. The Book of Enoch frames history as cyclical, order established, order disrupted, order restored. But beneath this structure lies something deeper. A warning. The text implies that certain thresholds carry risk, that power is not neutral, that crossing boundaries has consequences. And yet the story does not end with fear. Enoch himself is not condemned. He ascends, he witnesses, he records. He becomes a mediator between worlds. While the Watchers fall for seeking forbidden union, Enoch rises through obedience and restraint. The contrast is deliberate. Two movements, descent and ascent, transgression and alignment. In the next part, we will explore why the Book of Enoch was ultimately excluded from most biblical canons. Was it considered too radical, too speculative, or did its portrayal of heavenly rebellion challenge emergent theological systems? Because the fate of the text itself mirrors the tension within its pages. Why was the Book of Enoch excluded? If the Book of Enoch was so influential, if it shaped early Jewish and Christian thought, if it was even quoted in the New Testament, why was it removed from most biblical canons? This question is as important as the story itself, because the fate of the text reflects the tension inside it. First, we must understand something crucial. The Bible did not fall from the sky as a completed book. Canon formation was a long, complex process. Texts were debated, copied, rejected, accepted. Communities made decisions about which writings aligned with their theology and which did not. The Book of Enoch circulated widely in certain Jewish communities during the Second Temple period. Fragments found among the Dead Sea Scrolls confirm its early authority. But as Rabbinic Judaism developed after the destruction of the Temple in 70 CE, the theological climate shifted. Apocalyptic literature became less central. Speculation about heavenly hierarchies became less desirable. The focus moved toward law, tradition, and interpretive stability. Enoch, with its elaborate angelology and cosmic rebellion narrative, did not fit that direction. In early Christianity, the situation was similar. The Epistle of Jude directly quotes the Book of Enoch. This shows that at least some early Christians viewed it as authoritative. But over time, church leaders sought theological coherence. Texts that introduced complex hierarchies of angels named rebellious beings and described cosmic secrets risked destabilizing doctrine. There were also authorship concerns. The Book of Enoch claims to record the words of a patriarch from Genesis, but it was written centuries later. Pseudepigraphal works, texts written under the name of ancient figures, were common in antiquity. However, as canon solidified, authenticity became a central criterion. Enoch did not meet that standard, but perhaps the deeper issue was theological. The Book of Enoch presents a universe where heavenly beings are capable of significant moral failure. It distributes the origin of corruption partly beyond humanity. In later theological systems, especially within Christianity, the emphasis shifts. Human free will becomes central. Sin becomes primarily human responsibility. While fallen angel traditions remain, they are simplified. Satan becomes the primary adversary. The elaborate watcher narrative fades. Why? Because theological systems prefer clarity. Too many rebellious intermediaries complicate the structure. If divine authorities unified, heavenly order must appear stable. The Book of Enoch, however, portrays a more dynamic cosmos. Angels descend, oaths are sworn, judgments are delayed, cosmic trials unfold. It is vivid, complex, less controlled. Over time, traditions sought stability. Texts that reinforced central doctrines were preserved. Those that introduced ambiguity were set aside. Yet Enoch was never entirely erased. It remained canonical in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. It influenced mystical traditions. It shaped medieval angelology. It informed apocalyptic imagination for centuries. Even outside official canon, it survived. This raises an important reflection. Exclusion from canon does not equal insignificance. It simply reflects theological prioritization. Communities choose which narratives define their identity. The Book of Enoch asked uncomfortable questions. Where does corruption originate? Can heavenly beings fail? Is knowledge always safe? These questions remain relevant, and perhaps that is why the text continues to resurface in modern discussions. Not as proof of extraterrestrial intervention, not as secret history, but as a window into how ancient communities wrestled with power, knowledge, and responsibility. In the next part, we'll step back from historical exclusion and ask a deeper question. What does the Watcher narrative reveal about humanity's relationship with knowledge itself? Because whether or not the Watchers descended, the tension between knowledge and consequence is undeniably human. The psychology of forbidden knowledge beyond theology, beyond canon debates, beyond ancient geography, the Book of Enoch presents something deeply human. It presents a fear, a tension that appears across cultures and eras. The fear that knowledge once gained cannot be undone. The Watchers teach metallurgy, astronomy, enchantments. The result is not enlightenment, it is imbalance. Why would ancient communities frame knowledge as dangerous? Because knowledge shifts power, and power destabilizes structure. Imagine a society where tools are simple, weapons are primitive, and hierarchy is stable. Now introduce advanced metallurgy, stronger blades, more efficient armor. Power concentrates, conflict escalates, authority rearranges. Or imagine a society where celestial movement is mysterious. Now introduce structured astronomy. Seasons become predictable, calendars form, agriculture stabilizes. But religious authority may weaken, mystery shrinks. Knowledge is never neutral, it redistributes control. This may explain why myths across civilizations associate transformative knowledge with boundary crossing. Prometheus steals fire. Adam and Eve eat from the tree of knowledge. The Watchers teach forbidden arts. Each story follows the same arc. Access, transformation, consequence. Psychologically, forbidden knowledge carries power because it implies limitation. Something is forbidden, it must be significant. Prohibition creates allure. Ancient authors understood this dynamic. But the Book of Enoch goes further. It suggests humanity was not ready, that certain capacities require maturity. This resonates beyond ancient cosmology. Throughout history, technological advancement has often outpaced ethical reflection. The invention of gunpowder, the splitting of the atom, the development of artificial intelligence. Each breakthrough expands possibility. Each breakthrough introduces risk. The Watcher narrative may not be a literal account of heavenly beings. It may be a mythic representation of acceleration, of humanity gaining tools faster than it gains wisdom. When that happens, imbalance follows, violence increases, hierarchy fractures. The earth, metaphorically speaking, cries out. The Nephilim can be read as exaggerated giants, or they can be understood as amplified consequences. When power scales without restraint, its effects become larger than life. The ancient mind expressed this through giants devouring the land. The modern mind expresses it through environmental collapse and global conflict. Different imagery, same structure. The Book of Enoch externalizes responsibility. It attributes the origin of corruption partly to descending beings. But beneath that cosmology lies a recognition. Humans struggle with restraint. We seek knowledge. We pursue capability. And only afterward do we consider consequence. The Watchers, in this sense, are mirrors. They represent the impulse to cross boundaries simply because they exist. The oath they swear before descending reflects collective justification. If we all agree, it must be acceptable. If we bind ourselves together, perhaps the act becomes less dangerous. But collective action does not eliminate risk. It amplifies it. The punishment of the Watchers is severe. They are bound beneath the earth, forced to witness the outcome of their choice. This image suggests accountability, not merely for action, but for influence. Those who introduce power bear responsibility for its effects. This theme remains relevant. Leaders, inventors, architects of systems, all participate in shaping consequences beyond their immediate intention. Perhaps the Book of Enoch survived not because it reveals cosmic secrets, but because it captures a universal human dilemma. We desire knowledge, we fear its cost, we cross boundaries, and then we ask whether we should have. In the final part, we will bring this exploration together, not to determine whether the Watchers were literal beings, but to ask what their story ultimately reveals about us. What the Watchers reveal about us? After examining Enoch, the descent of the Watchers, the Nephilim, their exclusion from canon, and the psychology of forbidden knowledge, we arrive not at certainty but at reflection. The question is no longer, did the Watchers literally descend? The deeper question is, why did humanity preserve this story? Why did ancient communities tell and retell a narrative in which higher beings cross a boundary, introduce transformative knowledge, and unleash imbalance? Stories endure because they resonate. And the Watcher narrative resonates because it captures something fundamental about the human condition. We are a species that crosses boundaries, geographical boundaries, moral boundaries, technological boundaries. We don't remain observers. We descend into every unknown. The Watchers were assigned to watch, to remain separate, to observe without interference. They chose otherwise. That choice is profoundly human. Curiosity pulls us forward. Ambition pushes us outward. Desire blurs restraint. The oath sworn on Mount Hermon symbolizes collective justification. When enough voices agree, boundaries begin to feel artificial. Limits appear negotiable, and once crossed, return becomes impossible. The Watchers cannot undo their descent. The knowledge they release cannot be recalled. The Nephilim cannot be uninvented. The flood cannot restore innocence completely. The text presents a universe where actions ripple outward, where power magnifies consequence, where ascent and descent are moral movements, not merely spatial ones. Enoch ascends through alignment. The Watchers descend through transgression. The contrast is deliberate. One seeks to witness, the other seeks to intervene. Perhaps the enduring power of this narrative lies in its dual warning. Knowledge without wisdom destabilizes, but ignorance without curiosity stagnates. Humanity exists between those extremes. We cannot unlearn, we cannot unknow, we cannot return to pre-knowledge innocence, and perhaps we were never meant to. The Book of Enoch does not ultimately glorify ignorance. It does not argue that humanity should remain primitive. It argues that power requires responsibility, that thresholds demand maturity, that every descent carries cost. Whether we interpret the Watchers as literal beings, symbolic constructs, or mythic amplifications, their story confronts us with a choice. How do we handle what we know? Do we pursue knowledge for domination, for control, for spectacle, or for alignment? The Watchers sought experience. Enoch sought understanding. One disrupted order, the other documented it. And in that distinction lies the heart of the narrative. Perhaps the true descent is not from heaven to earth. Perhaps it is from wisdom to impulse. And perhaps the true ascent is not physical elevation, but moral alignment. The Book of Enoch survives because it dramatizes tension between heaven and earth, between authority and rebellion, between knowledge and restraint. It reminds us that progress is never purely upward. It is layered, complex, risk-laden. The ancient world expressed this through angels and giants. The modern world expresses it through technology and systems, different symbols, same dilemma. And so the story of the Watchers remains not as proof of hidden cosmic intervention, but as a mirror, a reflection of humanity standing at the edge of its own power, looking upward and deciding whether to descend